All right, we're pushing. Now we wait for YouTube. And it appears we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Making Awesome podcast, season 2, episode 36. One that we have been promising for a long time, and I haven't found the right person. And I found the right person. We are joined today by Johnny Crowder of Cope Notes. And honestly, that is just the tip of the iceberg for who you are. So can you give us the backstreet, boys? The who you are, the where you're from, the what you did, and as long as you love me.
I don't know if I'll be able to remember all four things.
Tell us about yourself.
So this question is always impossible to answer and like actually do it justice, but I'll say that I grew up in Tampa Bay, Florida, and I grew up with a bunch of different mental health diagnoses in a pretty unsafe environment and got really curious about my brain. So I went to school for psychology. I started treatment actually in high school and started working in peer support and learning about the brain. And then I started doing a bunch of volunteering. And then eventually I created a mental health resource, which then failed and became another one, which then failed and became the one that I run today, which has stood the test of time, which is called Cope Notes. And then also, if anyone is listening and is like, is this guy's whole job running a business? Mostly, but I also get to tour in a metal band and I get to be a public speaker. But my whole job is basically mental health, because whether it's the company or public speaking or music, I'm speaking about what I've been through to some extent.
You are now officially our second guest that has had some connection to rock music. Mara Hittner from Matter Hackers had a signed guitar behind her where she spent a summer hanging out with Axl Rose and quite a
As
few
one
other.
does.
Yeah, as one does, but you definitely have a cool background with the shoes back there. So you're a bit of a sneakerhead, I would guess, right?
Yes. So there are three things that really fascinate me that I'm a big nerd about. So one is sneakers, obviously. The second is like interior design and architecture. And the third is supercars and exotic cars. So basically, any type of functional art, like art you can interact with, I am mind blown by.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk offline
Yeah.
then. there's some cool art stuff. Like we were just up in Tallahassee, so I spent a little bit extra time up there and scanned the Florida Capitol Museum because whatever we were there. That'll be maybe an upcoming video. We'll see. But I wanted to talk to you about this because the subject of mental health in small business is, well, it's a tough one. It's seldomly talked about, and the answer is normally just deal with it. And that is not always the best answer for mental health. So, can you talk about kind of the stresses of what it's like to have a small business surrounding mental health, but also understanding that mental health is a problem for small business owners?
Yeah, I think that running a business is actually one of the most challenging things I've ever done mentally and emotionally. In fact, I was asked in a press interview what the hardest thing I've ever done was, and I said, what I'm doing right now. I'm in the middle of doing the hardest thing I've ever done because I really feel like, well, starting a business is very hard, but compared to running a business, starting a business is very easy. Running it is significantly harder, like keeping it, because when you start it up, dude, those first 90 days, those first 180 days, you're like, ooh, I'm so in love with this new
It's the
brand, with this
honeymoon
new
period.
idea. You're all hyped up. And then you get out into the marketplace and a trillion people tell you no. And you save up all this money to hire somebody who you then have to fire or who then quits and takes a job somewhere else. And you start experiencing like, and then you go through tax season
Yeah.
and you just experience all of these things that, if you were working at a company, it wouldn't feel as personal. But when you are running the company, you made it, you came up with the name, you designed the logo, you
hmm
cooked this up yourself. when that idea is rejected in the marketplace, or when circumstances change and the tides of the market decide that, your offering isn't the right price or doesn't have the right features, you're not talking to the right people, that can feel like such a deeply personal rejection. And the mental fortitude you need to face rejection on a daily basis is like, it's 10 times what I think you would need if you were just working for somebody else.
Yeah, it is completely different when a no feels so personal, right? Where you end up with a business that is effectively your baby, and it's treated like your baby. And no offense to some people, but sometimes you got an ugly baby, and while you can put some makeup on it and make it look pretty, it doesn't mean that it's going to function properly, right?
That's an interesting way to put it. No, I was actually, I got a Cope Notes text actually recently that said that when you face personal rejection, it can feel like the part of your brain that processes physical pain also processes rejection. So it's almost as painful to experience rejection as it is to like fall down and scrape your knee. And those wires getting crossed inside of your head make it really difficult to figure out whether or not you actually want to continue doing it in the first place. Not to mention, something I've faced before is like people that I really care about, whose
Mhm.
opinions I really value, people very close to me, are not always the most supportive. I think the way that friends and family tend to support entrepreneurs is saying like, well, you could always get a job somewhere else. Or, if
Yeah.
things ever get hard, you can always back up. And in their mind, they think that they're helping you by providing that safety net. But it actually, at least in me, bred doubt. I'm like, well, if my friends and family think I shouldn't be doing this, like they know me, should I give up? Should I just do the safe thing? So there's a lot of like internal questioning there as well.
Well, I know at least when 3DM was first starting, right? There was a lot of support from friends and family, and 6 years deep, not ever taken a paycheck. The last 2 years have not been kind to us as it's been for most small businesses. Yeah, the doubt that is spread from friends and family is alive and well, to say the least, and it's not their fault, right? The entrepreneurs that I talk to, it's commiseration, right? The meetings that we have to like
Yeah.
talk and hang out is just commiserating or complaining about problem clients. Like that is literally the bulk of what my meetings have been with other entrepreneurs. And we see that it's kind of the same deal, right? Where the fact that business is not guaranteed, success is not guaranteed, systems and things that we were used to are certainly not guaranteed, that a lot of people around us prefer to go back to what they know best, which is a job that is, unless the business closes, of course, is a guaranteed paycheck. And that kind of comfort is what a lot of people are used to. Cope Notes is, that daily affirmation. Do you find that a lot of the people that are utilizing your service are also business owners? Is that like a standout thing in your metrics?
So Code Notes is anonymous and we don't collect demographic information or anything. So we
That's the
we
answer I was
collect
hoping for.
as little information as possible. So for 99% of people who use Coke Notes, we just have a phone number
Mhm.
and that's it. And for the other people, we have an email for account recovery. But really, all we know is like anecdotally, if someone shares like, hey, I run a business. And actually earlier today, before like maybe an hour and a half ago, before this interview, I was talking to a founder of a small business who said that he relies on Coke Notes to feel motivated as a leader and to feel capable as he builds something. And I was like, dude, that means a lot to me because I'm in that same boat. Like
Mhm.
I rely on Coke Notes messages just like he does. Like
Yep.
when I am coming up against something at work and I'm feeling, imposter syndrome, or I'm
Mhm.
feeling like the odds are too far against me, or I'm wondering, there have been times running Cope Notes where I do the math on wanting to make a purchase, and I'm like, well, if we buy this, then that means we can't pay for that. And you
Yep.
have to like, it's a dice roll as a leader. Like, will making this purchase, let's say for you, it might be equipment. Will making this equipment purchase then potentially bankrupt another area of the business that we should also be investing in? So it's like you're making these high stakes decisions every day and feeling encouraged or clarified or validated, or even having a new perspective delivered by one of these text messages
Hmm.
could be just the reality check that some business owners need. And it's a relief to me to hear that other founders are using it the same way I am.
Yeah, I will say that we met what about 2 years ago, and hearing you talk in front of a group of people, sharing your wins, your losses, your challenges was refreshing. I think that's exactly what I said. I said your talk was refreshing to understand that we're not fighting alone, because a lot of small businesses will just put their heads down, and makers are the exact same way, right? Most makers are effectively small businesses. They just don't realize it yet. And they're
Yeah.
putting their head down. They're fighting this fight internally. And when people don't seek help, this can it kind of lead to some problems, right? I mean, there's some pretty serious mental health issues that can come from this.
Yeah, I would say that there's a tendency that founders and entrepreneurs tend to have that is dangerous in the mental health arena, and that is the DIY mentality. Dude,
Yeah,
I literally I designed our website on WordPress. That is not
same,
my background. I
same.
wrote every single word on our website. I designed our logo in a free online version of Photoshop that I found, and then had to send it to somebody on Fiverr to make a high res version of it because I had to export it as low res. I've done so many things myself. I wrote our
Hmm.
original uh, terms, privacy, and legal documents. I did at 25 with a psychology degree. Like, there's this tendency of entrepreneurs to say, I can figure it out,
Yep.
which serves us very well as early stage entrepreneurs who need to figure out a lot of stuff. It doesn't serve us quite as well when we might experience a depressive episode, or we might have a panic attack, and we think, well, I'll figure this out like I figure everything else out. I think that tendency to kind of face whatever problem we have head on um, also can be accompanied by this idea that I can do it alone.
Right.
And that, I think, can be pretty dangerous on the mental health side, because the habit we should get into is being able to say, holy crap, I'm 25 with a psych degree. I should not be writing legal documents. That kind of self awareness should also translate into, you know, I'm 37. I run a small business. I am trying to keep my wife happy and keep my employees happy and plan for next quarter. I don't know if I can face depression on my own. And you know what? I don't even think it's a matter of can, because I believe that many people are more stronger and much more capable than they believe. I think it's a matter of should. Should I face this depression on my own? Is that a wise decision?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. They say that every business needs an accountant and a lawyer. I think there's the third, which is the therapist. They need something, right? You have an
100%.
accountant. You have an accountant to make sure that your books aren't screwed up. You have a lawyer to make sure you can't get sued, and you have a therapist to make sure that the rest of you is running okay, because anyone that's been through a depressive episode in a small business understands that, yeah, we don't outwardly talk about it, but guess what? The success or failure of the business directly correlates to where our mental health is, right?
Dude,
So when 3D Musketeers did not turn a profit last year, I will not publicly, of course, here state the number, but I can tell you offline. It was a lot of money that we lost last year. It was not a great year for me personally. And, you know, on top of all the medical things I was going through, it is one of those things that it's like, screw it. I got to get help. And that is really the first step, I think, to truly understanding who you are as a person. And even further, at least on the business side of things, a business owner. Would you agree with that?
dude, all I'm thinking of right now is like there are things that we as business owners actively choose not to do. Like we are not our own dentists because we're like,
It's
bro,
fair.
teeth are just too complicated, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with teeth. I mean, I don't have the right tools. I didn't go to school for it. But then when it comes to mental health, we're like, I got this. How
Yeah.
complicated could it possibly be? It's like way more complicated than teeth, dude.
And you're
Um,
saying this is someone with a, a much closer background in mental health than I would,
yeah,
right? You have the psychology background. I got 2 business degrees. And a lot of business owners are, whether they're young, they haven't gone to college, they don't want to go to college,
yeah,
or college wasn't for them. They may not have kind of the skills, knowledge, and all that that you did kind of going into it. And you're even admitting here that, yeah, you knew what you were walking into, and yet you ran into it head on, which was the kind of the mental health challenges of running a small business. What was that like for you? I remember clearly the talk, and this is 2 years ago that I heard you speak, and that's good for me to remember something from 2 years ago. That means it left an impact because you do the same thing that I do. You had an oh shit moment. If I remember correctly, it was Cope Notes, the system you used to send text messages got marked as spam. And so
oh
no
yeah,
one was getting their
right.
messages. And
That's
you
right.
went, F it, I got nothing to lose. Let's do it. Right?
Dude, that was horrifying. I
Yeah.
completely forgot about that. Um, yeah, I mean, if you're only, I mean, think about it. If your only way to communicate with people who rely on you for services is text message, and then, and then the freaking cell phone carriers mark you, and it wasn't even us. They marked our SMS provider as spam.
Mm.
So it was like we couldn't even,
Yep.
I mean, you have so little power in that scenario. And honestly, that's what caused a lot of anxiety for me
Yeah.
was it wasn't like, okay, there's a problem. I have an outlined plan as to how I can address this problem. And if I do A, B, C, then I expect the result to be this solution. It was like our SMS provider was like, just hang on. And we're like, hang on. We're supposed to text people every freaking day.
Yeah.
And that powerlessness generated this level of anxiety in me that was I felt trapped. Like I almost felt like no matter what I did, no matter what Johnny Crowder did, it wouldn't affect the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to just like mentally try to figure out how to let go and divorce myself of whatever the outcome would be. And it's hard to like accept powerlessness in a scenario like that. But as business owners, that stuff happens all the time. Something happens like for physical product people, especially, there's like, oh, some supplier shut down or some auxiliary vendor raised their prices and now
Yep.
this shipment is delayed and now you have customers angry at you and you're like, there's literally nothing Johnny Crowder or founder, whoever that entrepreneur is, there's nothing I can do to fix what caused that. I can only react
Yep.
now. I cannot prevent something that was outside of my control to prevent.
And that is the tough thing, right? I, I went through 6 years of business school, and not in any of those classes did they say, maybe you should prepare for a global pandemic that's going to shut down the entire world. I guarantee you they do now. But it's
That's
like,
so funny.
well, shit. And I lost $250,000 contract that we had signed a month and a half before everything shut down. I lost it because of all that, completely out of my control. I went from the highest point that I've been in my business, like, this is it, we finally hit it, this is our big
Yep.
contract with one of the largest defense contractors on the globe, this is a guarantee. Nothing in life is guaranteed, and I'll tell you, when that all failed, I got injured roughly the same time. Dude, I don't think I've been lower in a long time. And that's when I decided to call back up my therapist, who can't come on the show. I'm like, please, I want you to come on to the show. She's like, I can't. It's a conflict of interest. You were a
Yeah.
patient. I said, I will sign whatever paperwork I need. You understand this. She said, no, you have to find someone who is not a licensed
Yeah.
therapist to talk about mental health. So, hilariously, About a year later is when we met. And I'm like, this guy, this is the conversation that we need to have.
Dude, we were in a similar position. It was going to be our first insurance contract that was going to start, and it was literally, I'm not joking, was
Mm-hmm.
scheduled to start March. So it was supposed to be end of Q1, beginning of Q2. So this was like end of March, early April. We are
Right.
all on track to sign. I was like, this is our first insurance contract. Like, who knows what it's going to lead to? I was like walking around my house like I was big cheese, dude. I would like walk into my kitchen like, yeah, that's right. I'm the guy who just closed the insurance contract, baby. I can do whatever I want. It was like that swagger that
Yep.
comes from like hitting your stride
Yeah.
and feeling that also what especially hurt me about that feeling, I'm not sure if you experienced this either, but it wasn't just the loss of the contract which hurt me, but it was also the relative gravity of that loss on me versus the insurance company.
Yeah.
To them it was freaking nothing.
It was a drop in the
They
bucket.
It's one of many contracts that they have cooking all the time, and they figure, well, let's put it off for a couple years. And I'm like, a couple years? That deal was going to fund I was going to hire a whole team with the money that I was going to make from that. So putting it off for a couple years for a big like multi-billion dollar company is no big deal. But for Johnny Crowder, 2 years into running a small business, I'm like, don't you take this from me.
Yeah.
What the heck? I'm devastated. And that made me feel even smaller because I knew that they could sustain the loss, but I felt as if I couldn't.
Yeah. Exactly the same way. Like, the writing was on the wall for us. Like, they were getting harder and harder to contact. And then the email came in, and it was just one of those shit moments where you don't know what to do. So you do what you always do. You figure it the heck out.
Yeah.
And that meant calling our lead engineer saying, you know how we've been talking about poaching you from your day job? So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And while you haven't quit your day job, and I'm happy because I can't afford it, I still want you to work with us as often as possible. And
Mhm.
hilariously, like, from an engineering standpoint, COVID was great for us because everybody was working from home. And
Yeah.
all of our engineers are 1099, so they had tons of spare time in their days where they couldn't normally do it at the office. They could log in for 20 minutes and take care of some cat at home.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of dealing with that loss of, this is gone, it's never coming back. Like, the things that have transpired since have told me there's no way this contract ever comes back. In fact,
Mhm.
they were just named as a very large company, as part of a movement for additive manufacturing from the White House. So contract's not coming back, which is a bummer.
So frustrating.
And we have to figure out, all right, we have to get back to our roots and understand what that looked like. But a lot of small businesses will just say, F it, I'm done, and I'm walking away.
Mhm.
And there's that part of mental health that is, it's left untouched of this whole ideation of, it happened, I need to accept it, I need to understand why it occurred and understand it wasn't my fault and move on. We never go through that as small business owners. So how do you feel like the community itself can kind of adjust itself to go through these losses and failures more healthily?
I think we have to stop pretending like everything's awesome. Like I've been purposely using my LinkedIn to build out loud.
I've noticed. It's great,
And
by the way. Go follow Johnny on LinkedIn, everyone. Seriously.
thank you. Maybe 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I didn't touch LinkedIn. I didn't care about it, didn't want to hear about it. It was just not interesting to me. And a buddy of mine encouraged me to make an account and start posting. And I was like, but I don't want to post business stuff. I'm not a business. I live in a t-shirt and jeans. I say dude in every other sentence. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And I learned about this concept building out loud.
Hmm.
which is basically when you fail, you talk about it. When you succeed, you talk about it. When you are confused, you talk about it. It's being more transparent about the challenges that we face as
Right.
business owners and trying to sugarcoat less. And in fact, if something little happens that's a victory, I will blow the trumpets and I'll be like, yeah, that's right. We closed this contract. I'm so excited. And I purposely celebrate those things because you freaking have to keep yourself motivated. But at the same time, if I run up to, in fact, I made a really big post about how we got rejected from Y Combinator. We made it all the way to the final interview. And I was rejected because I was a solo founder, and they typically like to choose pairs of co-founders.
Hmm.
And I felt like an idiot. Like I put all this time and attention into trying to get into Y Combinator. The application process is pretty involved. It was not my first time applying, actually. So I felt just like rejected and stupid and like I'd embarrassed myself. And then I posted about it. And all of these other founders hit me up and were like, dude, same. I felt so stupid and I didn't want anybody to know. And I realized from that post, like, if each founder and business owner talked more openly about their failures and challenges, we would all feel so relieved. Because when we fail as business owners, the tendency is to think, well, I guess I'm just an idiot.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just
You take
bad
it
at this.
personally.
But if we knew that there were 10 other founders that we could call on at any point that had already failed in those ways because we were talking about it publicly, we wouldn't take it so personal. We'd go like, oh, this is just part of it. Like losing a contract when COVID happened. Do you know that I blamed myself
I did
for
too.
losing the contract? I said, oh, I should have emailed them earlier. I should have gotten them to sign something. I should have, if only I would have pushed it to the previous quarter. And hearing another founder just right now in this conversation say, oh, we lost a big contract because of COVID, it reminds me like, it wasn't me. It was the world imploding. Don't take it personally.
Yeah, and hindsight, of course, is always 2020, right?
Yeah.
We can look back and say, yeah, that wasn't my fault. I didn't have shit to do with that. That was not me.
Yeah.
It was absolutely had nothing to do with me. But then I was about to say, well, I could have done better, right? I could have gotten them to sign it earlier. But you
Mhm.
know what? It wouldn't have done a damn
Right.
thing because nothing out there was going to stop this virus from doing what it did
Yeah.
when it did, right? And that contract maybe would have made I spent 16 months like cultivating this contract,
Mm.
signed it in February, it was dead in May. We didn't see a single check, right? So like had we did it maybe a quarter early, maybe I would have seen a part of a check and I would have felt okay. But yeah, it is one of those cases of damn it, it does suck. And I want to talk to the business owners that are going to hear this, read this, see this, whatever, and say, look, if you need help, I have a public email address. There's a few of them. There's YouTube at 3dmusketeers.com, info at 3dmusketeers.com. Those go directly to my personal inbox. I would
Mm.
love to work with other entrepreneurs out there because we don't talk to each other enough. And these business support groups like BNI are BS. They don't do anything. They're totally useless, at least for a service business like mine.
I've not heard of BNI. What's that?
It's like the connections, where you go in and you give a connection and you get a connection. Do you know how many connections I got for 2D printing? Dozens. Do you know how many I got for 3D printing, which is what I actually do? That's a big fat old goose egg. It was a waste of my time. Um,
Dang.
and they talked about, what was a win, what was a loss. People were talking about wins like they were the greatest thing on the planet, and nobody talked about losses. I spent 10 minutes talking about a loss, and I was asked not to come back because I was too negative. And I said, that's ridiculous. Being negative is part of being a business owner. And so, like, we see this a lot in the maker community, right? I paint a very broad picture with a broad brush, but I'm not inaccurate in that most makers have at least undiagnosed ADHD, minimally diagnosed ADHD, and that's like a commonality. If you look around your desk and it's perfectly clean, you may not be a maker. And I look at the same thing of, well, if we don't deal with the mental health that we know that we have, the one that we don't know that we have, which is this negative bias toward the work that we do, how can we overcome that? How can we get past it other than having somebody somewhere champion it for us?
Dude, one thing, this might not sound like an answer or a direct response to what you just said, but it really is. Let me make sure I got this right. So I read this over the weekend. Nobel Prize winning scientists are 22 times more likely to have a hobby outside of work. That sounds like such a simplistic thing, but let me explain. In the times when Cope Notes was the only thing in my life that I cared about, I was devastated by things going wrong because Cope Notes was 100% of my life pie.
Right.
And as I started to diversify just a little bit, and I mean a teeny tiny bit, I go to car shows on the weekends because I love staring at beautiful cars. I collect sneakers. So every once in a while, I'll open up like a sneaker drop website and I'll watch a video with a designer who worked on a specific sneaker silhouette. And as I pursue those other interests, I mean, going on a bike ride, going swimming, playing pool, like those little things that I feed that are not my business, slowly diversify my mental acuity so that when something happens in business, I don't think, oh, that's 100% of my life. I think, now I'm going to be real. I'm like, oh, that's like 83% of my life. So it's still a majority
Yeah.
of my life, but I don't feel quite as devastated because I feel more diversified. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs view their work as their mission, their purpose, their reason for existing, the only way they provide value to anyone for anything,
Right.
or the fact that providing value is the point of being alive, which is not true. That's a very utilitarian view of human existence. So I think as we slowly diversify, like, and this is going to sound really simple, but like going on a walk or eating some grapes or
Mhm.
petting a dog or something, you're just like, oh yeah, like the world doesn't revolve around my business. I can't make it my whole heart because my business is subject to the marketplace. I can't
Right.
have my whole heart be subject to things that are uncontrollable.
It's true. It's something that I know I did, and I know a lot of makers will do as well. They'll take the hobby that they love so much, they start selling it, they start figuring out they can make a
Right.
profit doing it. Then they find themselves with 38 3D printers taking up more than one room of their house, and a very, very, very understanding significant other. And now the hobby is a business, and that was the hobby. My other hobby was dancing. Not
Mhm.
that that's been a thing for the past 2 years. And now with the back injury, it's not going to happen for me for quite some time. But that's how I met my significant other. I met swing dancing.
Mm.
And, trying to find those other hobbies. We used to go kayaking. Can't lift a kayak anymore.
Yeah.
So understanding what that new normal looks like for people, I think has been a little bit tough. We saw a 46% increase in the 3D printing industry in the past 2 years, right? When
Mhm.
PPE was non existent, we answered the call and said, we've got thousands of people across the United States that can make PPE on demand until manufacturing can get up. And that's when I
Mhm.
saw this community come together as a whole to make amazing things. But it's not often that they come together. And I want to fix that. Um, we have Wexter here in the comments, a phenomenal 3D modeler, one of the best in the industry, says hobbies turned into a business usually ruin that hobby. And he's right. It usually does. How have you dealt with the hobby, which is, kind of taking care of mental health, turning it into a business? How's that kind of adjusted things for you?
Dude, it really effed me up. Like I completely relate to that. So my hobbies growing up were, I did a lot of volunteer work with mental health and speaking, and then I was also playing music. I was touring, and then my band got signed, and then we started touring full time. And I'm like, oh shoot, my literal, like when I fill out a form at the doctor and it says occupation, I have to put musician. Like that is kind of what I've always wanted, but now it's like that's my job. My day job is touring in a metal band, and it started making music feel more transactional. And then speaking, I started getting paid for it. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, so now speaking is part of my job too. And then running Cope Notes, I was like, well, shoot, all of my hobbies are my job now. And I was like, that's kind of great. And then I got really burnt out and miserable, maybe like a year and a half in to Cope Notes, maybe 2 years in, right around the 2 year mark. I just got so burnt out and crushed. And a buddy of mine, actually, this is funny, um, was like, you're miserable because you don't have any hobbies. And I was like, I sure do have hobbies, dude. Music much, mental health awareness much. And he was like, bro, those are your literal jobs. And so I realized I had to figure out what I liked. So I'm like, I tried kayaking, I tried playing tennis, I like just I tried CrossFit, like all of these things that I'm like, I don't know, maybe I like this. I tried playing video games, and it was trial and error. And then a few things really caught me. I was like, wow, I love learning about sneakers, like fashion designer, like literally the way these designers say, like, oh yeah, I decided to have this one line go up like this because it reminded me of a palm tree that I saw when I was 17, and it gives me this feeling of relaxation, and I chose this color. I'm just like, what? There's a pair of shoes, and this guy's getting all like existential and deep. Same with cars, same with architecture and interior design. I started realizing like there are things that I find interesting. I just hadn't turned them into hobbies because I was operating under the assumption that my job was still my hobby. So I was like standing in my own way of learning what I cared about.
It, I could not agree more with that. My hobby was 3D printing, and then it was a business, and now it's the only thing that I do.
Yeah.
And yeah, the necessity of a hobby. Like, I used to be crazy hardcore into audio, just really spending time tuning a setup to eke out just that little extra. Like, the graduation cap that I wore at college had tubes on it from a tube amplifier, and a 45 of You Sexy Thing by Hot Chocolate, because I'm funny, apparently. um
What the heck?
because it's I like Motown. So it's just like, those were my hobbies, and I don't have time for them anymore.
Yeah.
As a business owner, how do you find time for those hobbies? I mean, other than, you're at a point now where you're delegating, right? But in the beginning, how did you find time for those hobbies?
So I had a tendency to work right when I woke up until the time when I went to bed. And it was
Yep.
fairly common for me to like, I mean, wake up at 6:45. I'm on my computer within 5 minutes, literally, to the point, I'm not lying to you. This is full disclosure. I've taken my laptop into the bathroom so that I'm catching up on emails while pooping.
This
This
is
is like,
normal business life as far as
so
I'm concerned.
so yeah, so there was like an overcommitment to work. And what I started doing was I realized it was really difficult for me at first to take a break during the day
Mhm.
because I was so locked in. I was like in my flow state. I don't want to break out. So what I started doing was building in a buffer and saying, like, I can't open my computer for work. I can't open any of my work applications inside of 30 minutes of waking up or 45 minutes of waking up. And I would use that time in the morning. In fact, there was a multi-year period where every morning before I could start work, it was a requirement for me. Before I started work, I would watch a video of a car review or walkthrough of a car that I liked. So I would save all these videos on YouTube, and then I would have a queue, and I'd
Mhm.
say, oh, I want to start my emails, but I can't until I watch my car review first. And it helped me build margin to where now it doesn't have to be as regimented. But at first, yeah, my encouragement to anyone who's having trouble making time is, if you place the buffer just before you go to bed and just after you wake up. So you maybe place like a 30-minute buffer on either side and make your workday ever so much smaller, just by an hour, and purposely try to prioritize leisure. It really helped me.
I am slowly doing the right before bed, but normally that's, I'm trying to find a way to shut my brain off and
Mhm.
allow me to sleep. So I'm like on my phone, And then that inevitably means I'm going to YouTube, I'm going to watch a 3D printing video, I'm going to comment on it from the company's YouTube channel because that's exposure.
Yeah.
But it's also like that's I want to watch these videos. I'm only commenting because it's the company, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of violating my own protocol, and yeah, it is one of those difficult things is to find that time. And when did you find yourself truly following that rule? When did that happen for you?
Well, I was starting to make progress on it, and then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the parts of my life that I enjoyed, like I was no longer going to church. I used to go to trivia with my friends. I wasn't going to trivia anymore. I wasn't touring with my band. So then work became increasingly more of my life because as the other pillars fell, Cope Notes kind of flooded in to fill those gaps. And I was like, oh no, I'm like regressing. But I can say that something that actually helped me, and this has been fairly recent, mind you, inside of the last 6 months that I've started doing. This was I can't take credit for this. This was my therapist's idea. So he said to choose 1 3-hour period once per week. So I can put it wherever I want on whatever day at whatever time. Take 1 consecutive 3-hour period. So I don't get to break in the middle of it.
Right.
3 consecutive hours of non-productivity. So that means not only no work, because if it was only no work, then I would read a book about business, or I would, I'd try to find
It's
a way to
work
like
adjacent.
around it. Yeah. So he was like, you can't be productive. So you can't, no cleaning your apartment, no exercising for the sake of exercise, like working out. This has to be a 3-hour period where you're doing something purely because you want to do it. And he said, even if it's nothing, even if you lay catatonic on a couch for 3 hours staring at the ceiling, that's the way you choose to spend that time. But you cannot spend it being productive. And that has helped me. I've taken naps during that time. I've gone to car shows during that time. I've gone swimming during that time. Like there are so many different ways that you can use it. And once you have a 3-hour block, putting 30 minutes at the beginning and end of your workday feels like nothing because you already did 6 times that once per week. So it helped the buffer system a little more manageable to me because it's like, well, it's not 3 whole hours, it's just 30 minutes,
I dig it. And my cheeky response would be I sleep about 3 hours a night. I'm not working when I'm sleeping.
Sleep is productive. That's a challenge.
Yeah. So I love this idea. I'm gonna try. It's tough. I'm gonna try. Because yeah, eking out those moments are increasingly difficult, right? Finding those hobbies. What was it for you that kind of spurred this search? And then the inevitable find, like how did you find out that collecting sneakers was that hobby that you really enjoyed? Because I don't think that's one that you just fall into. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's one maybe you eased yourself into.
So with cars, I was trying to remember what I liked before the business.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, who was I before I started this? What was I even into? So I started taking inventory and I'm like, oh yeah, I really liked stand-up and improv comedy and sketch comedy. I was the kid who grew up with like car posters on the wall and like car folders and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I liked
Diablo and Countach,
cars.
I'm guessing.
I love the Lamborghini Diablo. I
Yeah.
love the Lamborghini Countach. I literally, don't make me do this. I have my Lamborghini Sarasota keychain here for when I inevitably buy a Lamborghini. I know I will one day. And then I also have, I'm going to be this guy right now
Be the guy.
because you have to see this.
I'm
I
down.
have a whole model Lamborghini collection over here. I won't show you all of it, but this is my Lamborghini Sian.
Yep.
It is my favorite. I think if you gave me infinite budget, this would be my purchase. And then I have, oh, I love that I get to do this on video. This is my Aventador. It's not an Aventador SVJ, which is my favorite, but
It's
this
the
is
Roadster. Yep.
so I have like all of these things here in my room. And it's funny because I would have thought like like supercars and stuff. Isn't that like this childish, like, oh yeah, I have my Lamborghini folder or whatever. Like, isn't that like for a 10-year-old or something? And I realized that that's kind of what makes a hobby great, is that it's not serving some greater purpose. Like everything I like, I've somehow twisted it to make it like, I want to use it to make the world a better place. And that makes even the simplest thing work. But if I can find something, now a lot of people have the opposite problem. They should really try to find ways to be more productive. But specifically for entrepreneurs, finding ways to be less productive for small periods of time is really valuable. So I tried to find like, what are things that interest me that don't actively make the world a better place? So like, for example, a Lamborghini Diablo is not saving anyone's life, but it is one beautiful piece of machinery,
It's
and
art. It's
staring at it
rolling
is
art.
fun as heck. Yeah.
It's dinosaur powered art. And
Oh yeah.
that is okay. So dream car, right? We heard SVJ, but what's the dream car? Money is no object. What's it gonna be?
So probably the Lamborghini Sian, although I'm a huge fan. You should see all the models I have here. Um, I am borderline obsessed with the Bugatti Divo.
The Devo. Yep.
One of my favorite cars of all time. Truly stunning. I have multiple, I have this, and then I have two framed photos of this exact spec from different angles in other rooms in my house. I'm that dude. So I
That's
need to
totally
hurry up
fine.
and get a bajillion dollars so I can afford one, because I have quite a ladder to climb.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I drive a 20-year-old Honda, so I understand that. It is not a Lamborghini. I think it makes less horsepower on all six cylinders than a Lamborghini makes on one cylinder.
Dude, this is my desktop.
LaFerrari coupe. Yeah, not an Aperta. Very nice.
I love that you know car stuff.
I might also love cars.
I
Uh,
love LaFerraris. I have a model over there too. I have an FXXK
mm-hmm. Yep,
model,
track
which I
only.
didn't even know existed. I found it while I was looking for a LaFerrari model.
The Ultimate
Uh,
series from
but
Ferrari.
the
Yeah.
cool thing about caring so much about this is you see how we're like getting animated and excited. That feeling is the only utility that you need from your hobby.
I'll
Please
flex a
don't try to
little
make it about
bit.
anything else.
I have worked with 458 Destroyer on Instagram. So he had a 458 Italia Liberty that was Liberty Walked. It was the first Liberty Walk 458. We scanned and printed the entire car inside and out, the whole
No
thing. Yeah.
freaking way.
Yeah, so that's like that's my car claim to fame, right? My real claim to fame is I worked at the Smithsonian and Snoop Dogg, right? Those are our two like kind of cool clients. I guess locally would be Publix, but I'm a car guy. I've been a car guy. I love that whole industry. When we're driving, I can point out cars on the road, and the Better Three Quarters is like, I don't know if this is good or bad, but you have way too much knowledge over something that is completely trivial to everybody else in the world.
That's what makes it, to me. Now, normal people, I think normal people, as in people who are not entrepreneurs, I consider us to be very abnormal.
Yeah.
I think that normal people seeking productive hobbies is a great idea. For entrepreneurs, seeking things that are trivial and the world is not riding on these things that are just purely for enjoyment and just because you're curious, that feeling of being interested reminds us that the world isn't about our businesses. And that's a reminder that I
Mm-hmm.
need on a daily basis. In fact, yesterday I hung out with some friends, none of whom are entrepreneurs, and they got so heated on like, are you serious? There's no way that Kaepernick could have ever done this thing. Like, oh, dude, if you put him on this team, he would totally crush. And they're like
Is he a
in
football
each other's
player?
faces on fantasy football.
Okay. Okay.
they are like at each other's throats. And I'm just like, wow, this is so important to you. And it's such a good reminder for me to see that like the world doesn't revolve around my business. Like the whole time I was there, nobody asked me about my business, about my employees, any contracts that we have working, our product roadmap, nothing. They were yelling at each other about fantasy football. And I'm like, wow, what a beautiful slice of like the rest of the world that I get to
Beautiful
experience.
slice. Got it. Oh, this has been a great talk. Seriously, I know you have to get going here pretty soon. For those that couldn't figure out, Johnny's a very busy man. I mean, you had a TEDx talk. You're a
Dude,
professional speaker. You had two now. Okay, you're a professional speaker. You run a company that for less than $10 a month, you're providing daily texts of affirmation to people to kind of help them through the BS that they're going through. You're a car lover. What other things do we not know about the great Johnny Crowder here?
starting to get pretty good at cooking.
Okay. What's your favorite meal? What do you like cooking?
It's a great question. I wasn't prepared for that.
I
As
told you it's
I
free form.
this is kind of a cop out, but I've really liked making something that uh my family would make when I was growing up that is called, I don't even know if this is like a PC term anymore, but it was called hobo,
Okay.
and it was a meal made up of leftovers of like all of the other things.
Yeah.
And it's like so freaking good. So any chance I get, I like save up a bunch of leftovers and then combine them to make a dish called hobo, and it is outstanding.
It's always about learning how to reuse the stuff that most people would consider waste. And honestly, that is effectively what small business is. We have to look at
100%.
what others might not consider to be incredibly valuable. We have to show them that there's value to it. We got to cook it, and we got to feed it to them in a way where they're going to enjoy it, because otherwise they're spitting it back up and they're leaving a bad review on Google. And none of us
Yeah.
like that. Johnny, I appreciate your time so much here, man. Thank you so much for coming on, agreeing to do this. It's been a pleasure. Any final thoughts before we let you take care of the rest of your Monday?
So just that, I'm assuming that there are people watching this who run their own businesses.
Yep.
And I'm assuming there are people who watch this who have experienced that imbalance between professional and personal. My encouragement to you is and keep in mind, this is my personal opinion. So again, not a doctor. This is just what's worked for
Yeah,
me.
this is not advice. We are not mental health counselors. This is not mental
Yeah.
health advice. Should have started with that.
I would encourage you to look into work-life integration rather than work-life balance. I feel that if you have a 9 to 5 job where you close your work computer and you drive home, work-life balance is achievable. However, for people who run their own businesses, I feel that work-life integration has been much healthier for me and has allowed me to enjoy both my professional life and my personal life much more than I did when I was trying to achieve balance. So please, if I can give you some homework, Google work-life integration versus work-life balance and see which one resonates with you, because I think I was chasing the wrong one for a while and guilting myself for not achieving it.
It's fair. I like it. I think that's a great place to end. I agree. I'm still chasing it myself. I like this term work-life integration rather than work-life balance, because yeah, my entire life revolves around the business. Let's find a way to integrate it properly.
Amen.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time. Take care. And as as our watchers know, I've got a bit of an outro. So stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Go get a therapist, please. Have a good one, guys.